Yo, yo.
Check.
Mic check.
Good to go. All right, rip it.
All right. Doing something a little bit different today. Thanks for joining us for an impromptu podcast with our friend Nick Alfieri, or as we like to call him, Nomad Nick.
The legend.
Yep. He has quite an amazing story, so we asked if he'd be open to sharing it with us today, and he has happily obliged. So here we go.
So the reason we wanted to sit down with the Rock Boy is because mainly he's lived such a non-traditional life, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up in the same area, we're the same age, and you took such a different route than the average person. And you and I have talked about this for years, right?
Yep.
Why take the traditional route? Why go to college? Why do all these things that everybody else is doing? Let's do something a little bit different that we want to do, genuinely want to do. So we found it to be a perfect fit to have you on here and talk about that.
Inspiring.
And, yeah, it was inspiring. And really, from my perspective, unconsciously, you have...
Subconsciously.
Unconsciously.
I'm dead.
Subconsciously, you have inspired us to do this, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily, we want to go do exactly what Nick's doing, but
Yeah.
in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, this guy's killing it. He's having the time of his life, and he doesn't give a bleep what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Tell us a little bit, though, about how you guys met.
yeah. So, crazy enough, I decided to go to Kent State in Ohio for aviation. And I want to say the first day we get
we're
there.
on the same floor.
Yeah, first day we get there. There's all these dorm buildings. There's all these different floors. The first day we get there, we're just mingling with people in the hallway, and we run into Nick, Rock Boy, and we start talking about where we're from and blah, 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 blah. And we find out we're both from Rochester, and we had never met each other before. You know, Taylor and I went to Rush Henrietta. He went to Aquinas. So we were immediately family, I think, from the jump.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all four of us. And Nick and I just connected at that point, I think on a different level than everybody else, because as I said before, everyone's kind of living that standard college life, and we're like, what are we doing? This seems like a wasteful time for us. We want to do something a little bit bigger, something different. And then fast forward, we moved to Chicago together.
Yep.
So he left Kent State. I stayed
Wild.
another year. We stayed connected. When I came home for school, we would hang out. And he's like, dude, I'm moving to Chicago. You should come. And I was at that point looking for another school somewhere else. I didn't want to stay in Ohio. I was thinking Buffalo maybe. And he presented that option. And it wasn't even a question. I was just like, let's do this. And then we moved to Chicago together and had a blast. And then once school was over, we kind of went our separate ways and haven't really connected for the past few years. We haven't stayed connected. And when we went on this adventure, that was a top priority for me, was I need to reconnect with Nick. We kind of went our separate ways. You went down your path, I went down mine. But the love was obviously always still there. And, you know, from my perspective, and I'm sure from yours. And I wanted to reconnect.
I know you love me.
I hope. And I wanted to reach out, and he reached out to me, and we saw him in Wyoming, and we've seen him again. Now we're in Tucson, Arizona. So it's just been full circle for me, and you know, an awesome time. So what I would love for you to share to start off is from that moment of we graduate college, I leave Chicago, I'm doing my thing. You start doing your thing. Like, take us through that journey and the thought process behind it, and kind of what you were feeling on your end.
Absolutely. So I think you left, when did you leave Chicago? 2016?
Yeah, so I left
at
at least
It was 2016.
2016 when we graduated, yeah.
So I was there for a couple more years. I was in Chicago until 2018. I graduated from Columbia, so we got those degrees, both of us.
Yep. Got it done.
Regardless, we
Hell yeah.
still got our recommended routing.
We did exactly what we said we were going to do, but that's fine.
Yeah, so I was there for 2 more years when you left, and I graduated, and I was looking for jobs. I graduated with a music business degree, and I was looking for jobs in the publishing sync world. So sync's like anything that connects music with TV, movies, sound, that whole world. And did a couple internships. I was fully ready to go into that world. And then my buddy hit me up. Was like, I'm going to make my movie, make my passion project. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to get some investors and just go back to Rochester and do it. And I was like, my lease is up in a couple months. Just graduated college. I'm
Why
really
not?
not
Yeah, and
tied
this is
down.
your boy. Like, this
Yeah,
is your
yeah.
day one.
Yeah, best
Grew
friends
up with you.
since freshman year of high school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole story on its own. Maybe we'll get pieces
Maybe we'll
in
get
there.
into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, I don't know. Why look for a job right now? I can go back. I wanted to go back to Europe. That was kind of like part of my summer plan when I was going to leave Chicago. So I'm like, it's a perfect opportunity. I can go to Europe and then go back to Rochester, not be tied to anything, and just go help my friend make a movie. Didn't know what that involved. That
Right.
had no idea what that meant
Right.
at the time. I was just like, I'm going to go help a friend make a movie.
So rewind on that. When you went to school, and because you went to Kent for a year, you took a few years off, went back to school to
Yeah.
finish your bachelor's. But what
So-
made you want to go back and focus on music management? Like,
I think you were a big part of that.
Yeah.
I think me
Aw.
and you and Cam, we had a little era there where you were making
Jack
music.
Harper, baby.
Jack Harper.
the recommended route.
Jack Harper.
Tune in. I'll link the
No,
album
you
below.
won't. No, you won't.
Should we bring it back?
But
on
the
day?
best times. though.
Yeah, it was so
much
fun. We would think like, we had this just idea and this dream. I was like, let's make music and maybe
Yeah.
we can get famous off of it. Let's move to Chicago. It was just, it was
Yeah.
heavy dreams, but it's like I think we kept that throughout our whole life.
Yeah,
It's
For
just
sure.
Absolutely.
the same thing with what you were saying with going to Kent is like to give our 18, 17-year-old selves credit. I think for both of us, that was our way of, from the beginning, from a young age, just getting out of Rochester. I think that's why we didn't know what we wanted to do, but we
Huge
wanted to get
leap.
out.
Yeah.
We wanted to get out. And that's what Kent was for both of us
Yeah.
originally.
And going to Chicago too is just a bigger city. And
So
I was talking to you about it last night, like when we got in the moving truck and our parents were like, yeah, move to Chicago. We fill up a moving truck with odds and ends of things we could pick up from garage sales and from our family. And I just remember ripping it
Wild.
through like Pennsylvania and Ohio, and you and I were just buzzing, having the best time. Like it was just the start of a new chapter and very memorable to me. So
yeah, it was so
yeah.
freeing. It was so freeing. Like 19 years old, just
just going.
loading up a Penske
Yeah.
truck and just driving on I-90 for 9 hours. You feel like that, you're
Showing up to this
expanding.
apartment that you've never seen. You hope it's there.
You're driving to the edge of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the edge of your world at that point. I know up to my point in my life,
100%.
I went on road trips with my family growing up, but I never driven to Chicago. So that was
Right.
the furthest west.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you and Cam and Tom, we had a whole little friends, some people making beats, and I wasn't a musician, I wasn't a producer, but
I love music too.
I loved music and I liked to see how things operated. And I kind of, we were saying I was your manager and Cam's manager.
Yep.
We didn't really know what that meant at the time.
Right.
But that's kind of why I wanted to go to school.
You know what it meant, though? You were the Oompa Loompa in a music video.
The Oompa Loompa. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, dude, you were the mold though. Like you
Yeah.
kept everything
Yeah.
on track. You were so good at it, and it was just so much fun.
Keeping
Yeah.
ideas, yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
That Oompa Loompa music video, where is that?
Dude, I
Gone.
need to find it.
Scraped.
I have the other one. I just can't find it. And that one was so much better.
There's been like
Way
a
with
better.
Luke and
There's been like a few times throughout the year, so it'll just pop in my head and I'll try looking for it.
No.
yeah, it was so good, dude.
No.
So much fun. So you go to Europe. You graduate from Columbia.
Columbia.
You leave Chicago.
I go to Rochester. I
Yep.
would spend August through October in Rochester making the movie. And it was a real skeleton crew, 5 to 10 people, depending on the day, working on it. We flew all the cast out from LA. That's pretty much what our entire budget went for. We made the whole movie. Joey will say $13,000. In terms of what went in it, was probably close to 30.
Yeah.
I'll tell the truth when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I don't like saying we made a movie for
which is still nothing.
it's still
Yeah.
peanuts.
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, we made and then Joey went on a reality show, kind of blew up. It took us 5 years to finish it. That came out in July, but that was a whole chapter of my life. That's kind of what
And
I
what's
give
the
it so
movie
much.
called?
Young
Just
Line,
so-
Young Line of the West. It's a nickname for Rochester.
Young Lion of the West, and it's on Amazon.
On Amazon Prime, Tubi.
Tubi.
Those are the two main. You can watch it for free on Tubi or rent or buy it on Amazon.
Yeah,
Go rent and buy
just
it
give us
on
like a quick
Amazon.
synopsis of that story too, because I think people who are watching this, family and friends who are in Rochester, would
Yeah.
probably wanna check
It's a
that out.
crime drama about a club owner, a club named Club Vertex, which ironically, when we were making the film, this shows you the amount of research and kind of how indie it was that some of the people in the pre-production stage and do research. The club in the movie is named Vertex. There actually is a club in Rochester named Vertex. When we made the film, we had no idea there was a club in Rochester named Vertex.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So this club promoter from this club in Rochester is all like connected with the gang, with gang stuff, gang affiliated, mafia affiliated. He kind of tries to step over his mob boss and attempts to open up his own club with some of his buddies. And it's about his downward spiral and kind of how somebody that's kind of just lost in the loop of the world that, you know, raises them and never gets out of it. It's kind of like, you know, the mousetrap that can't see beyond its walls.
And we've watched it. It's very
Yeah.
good.
I just love that it filmed in Rochester, and
How quick you can just. I mean, I know people that
yeah,
kind of have lived that and
yeah, for sure.
unfortunately aren't here anymore, or we don't know where they are right now.
right, for sure.
But so many people like that are from. It's a story of Middle America. I think it's a representation of where we're from, but where we're from is like so many other places in this country.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I
After the movie.
went and filmed that. Was in Rochester from August 2018 to January. And in January I left and bought a car on my birthday. And then less than a week later, I drove it to Los Angeles in 5 days. Moved to LA.
So from Chicago, Rochester, now we're in LA.
Now we're in LA. And I was in LA for a year and a half. Lived with Joey, who I made the movie with, for 6 months. Then had my own studio apartment for about a year. And with about 3 months left in my lease, COVID happened. I was doing some theater stuff. Obviously, still working on the movie. I had a job at a bar, making ridiculous money, working 3 nights a week. I was bringing in anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a week, working 3 nights. So I kind of had a good situation.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd end up in LA, but here I was in LA, planning on being there for the long haul, and then COVID happened, and it shifted my whole brain.
Yeah.
I
think it did everyone.
I wrote a book. Hopefully, it'll be out in a couple months. I'm aiming for my birthday, January 7th. But
Okay.
Leaving Los Angeles is the first chapter. It's about
So that's where the book starts.
Yep.
book starts with my LA story.
Okay. And what's the book called, just so everyone knows?
When Everything Rose Rugged.
So you said January 7th.
January 7th. That's
Okay.
what I'm aiming for.
Very good.
So you're in LA, making good money. You've got your own spot.
Mhm.
COVID.
You're around Joey, his people. You're meeting people. COVID hits. The bar shuts down.
Yep.
What do you do?
Then what?
I'm in a cocoon by myself. I have a studio apartment in Hollywood alone. That's where I was when the pandemic hit.
Wow.
When we were, it was weird at first, but then it was one of the most transformative things I've ever gone through, because it was just like, what now? You know, I kind of was like, everything was laid out in front of me. Like, I have a good job. I'm here for the long haul. My lease was ending. I was in a sublet, so like the lady was coming back. So I kind of like had plans, my neighborhood, what I wanted, what the range was in of the apartments I was looking for. I was fully ready to be there.
Yeah. For
And
the
then-
long haul.
Yeah, for the long haul. And I kind of just started going into this, the way I put it, it was like going into a cocoon,
Yeah.
where I just like started being inside and being by myself. I was 3,000 miles from my family,
Yeah.
you know, and I just started getting like,
Like, what do I want?
what do I
What do I
want?
really want?
Yeah, and there's all these places like Yellowstone and Yosemite and Zion that like I always like wanted to go to. I wanted to go to national parks, but I always pushed them to the back of my mind. I was still
Yeah.
always a city person.
Where
years,
did that come from?
5
Where
years
did
in
that
Chicago.
interest in those places come from?
It was always there. It was always there.
Just ingrained in
And I
you.
think it expanded when I moved in 2019 to move to LA. I thought I was moving to like pursue this career in entertainment.
Yeah.
But really, now that I look back, like that was kind of what I had to go through to realize the real reason of what I actually love was
Yep.
being out west,
Yep.
in the scenery, in the parks, and in the landscape that is out here, because it was never accessible for me for the first 26 years of my life, you know, 25 years of my life. It seemed, as far as to better Egypt, it was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't have family out there. Why would I go
Right.
out there? You
Right.
know? I've been to California once. I'd been to Texas once, but other than that,
Yeah.
there's no reason for me to go west.
Yeah.
You know, and I think moving out there and that quick, even though it was a 5-day road trip, it truly changed everything. And in that 18 months I lived in LA, I went to Vegas, drove to Vegas to see my family, took a trip to San Francisco, went to Joshua Tree a handful of times just because a quick day trip, went to San Diego. So I started just driving around. I took a trip to Denver. So in that 18 months, I took all these side trips somehow in that chaotic year and a half.
Yeah.
And my love for the West just deepened. And then I was like, I think during COVID, I just kind of went into this shell and I was like, I want to like road trip. I want to like see this country. And I'm like, if I leave LA, I don't have anything. Like I don't have anything. I don't have a job right now. I want to have an apartment soon. If I cut the expense of living in LA out of my life, because I had decent enough savings to travel for a little bit, and I lost my job at the bar, so I had unemployment coming at some point. It's kind of like the cliffhanger of my book of when that came.
Yeah.
But it was about 3 months before I saw any money. It was just a big lump sum at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the time to do it. It was like the first time in my life where I felt like
there was nothing holding you
up until
back.
that moment. I was always, I guess, fighting with time, rushing against time. And then I was like, when COVID happened, I think the biggest revelation is like, oh, I could view time as a luxury now.
Yeah.
You know, there's no
100%.
There's no running. I don't have to finish this before I go to work. I don't have to do this to pay rent by the end of
Right.
I could just go see these places and not have anything over my head that I have to worry about. So that was kind of like the initial experience of it. And I would say it all happened so fast. You know, the shutdown happened mid-March and I was on the road June 1st. Okay. So it was like this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to do in the future. Nope, that's all changing. And I've been journaling every day since 2017. So that was one of the easiest parts about me being able to write a book is I could go back and see that shift in my writing and in how I was thinking. And I was like, I was thinking about these things. There's the idea, the contemplation, and then I made a decision. And then I just started like doing everything to line that up and make it happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like you guys can relate to that with what you're doing right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Did you leave from LA?
I left from LA, yeah.
Okay. So you're at a crossroads, you got to leave, and not only are you going to travel wherever you're going to travel, but you're going to do it by yourself, which I think is a huge part of this. The average person would probably go back to Rochester and say, you know what, I did my thing in LA, I'm back home, I can get a job pretty easily and reset and then figure out what the next step is. But you decided, I'm going to go hit the road by myself.
For 2 weeks. So it was a journey. So it was even a journey to get there. So I did a 2-week road trip. So basically, my book's 3 parts. There's part 1, which is the summer of 2020.
Yeah.
Part 2 is the Great American Adventure, and that was 3 months on the road in the fall of pretty much October to December 2020.
Yep.
And then part 3 is the Optimist Escapade, which is chapters 11 through 17, and that's like the 7 months after my trip to Alaska. And chapter 1, chapter 10, and chapter 18 are all standalone chapters that aren't a part of the 3 parts. Okay. So it's almost kind of like a play. But that summer, I actually left by myself. I was planning on leaving by myself, and my friend joined me. Picked him up in Vegas, and he joined me, and I drove him to Chicago. And then I ended up in Rochester. Yep. And I was there for about a week, and then went on a road trip with my mom. And we split in New York City. Flew to St. Croix, and camped in the rainforest. My cousin lives off grid.
Wow.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was before you really started to.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Rochester immediate after being in the islands for about 3 weeks. Drove to Chicago, kind of on a whim. And that's when I was like, okay, my summer plan's over now. This is like almost September now. So what I just said was like, that's the whole first part of my book, like chapters 1 through 6. Yep. But it wasn't really until October where I'm like, I'm doing this. Right. Like, but it was like all of these like road trip, islands, and all these experiences. Like, no, like I'm changed now. This isn't a vacation anymore. I feel like up until that summer, it was all just me doing all these trips. It still felt like a vacation. Yeah. Right. And then it was like a whole summer of me traveling. I'm like, I'm not going to get a job. I'm not moving to LA. Right. I have my fucking car.
You wanted to make a life out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, it was a whole journey. So cool. The LA decision happened. That's what put push me out.
Mm-hmm.
But then everything I did that summer was kind of like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
I think a way I put it in one of my games, one of my chapters was like I was a rookie just jumping into a game you didn't know how to play yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when I
But
got
you
back,
still did it,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So incredible. So you go to the island, and what are you doing there?
I was living on a fruit farm in a tent for 3 weeks.
Oh my god.
All right.
A fruit farm.
My cousin still lives off grid, not at the same place, a little bit further down the road, a little bit more developed.
Yeah.
More like an Airbnb type situation.
Okay.
But at that point in 2020, he was living with his girlfriend at the time, and then this guy who owned the land. It was like a 6-acre plot.
Mm-hmm.
All of these, planted gardens and all of these tropical fruit trees that came with the land, just mangoes everywhere. Chapter 5 is called Underneath the Mango Tree. So my tent was underneath the mango tree for 3 weeks. And it was the first time I think I camped in my life was that 3 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's a
Really?
whole new world for you, too, is just being on the road and having
Or
to
more
figure out
than
where
more
you're
than
gonna stay.
camping for like a day or two. That was the first time ever.
Yeah.
And like really camping.
Really can't. Like I didn't have a vehicle. I was on an island in the Caribbean, and I was 3.5 miles off a dirt road in the rainforest from the main road. Like I was.
Yeah. You were out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were
So are
really
you
out
writing this book at that time? Or
No,
did you start the
journaling.
book later down the road?
So
once-
I'd stopped. This period of my life ended in September 2021.
there. Okay.
So I kind of nonstop pretty much traveled from June 2020 till September 2021. I didn't do anything with my life other than travel. So all I did was just see America during that time frame.
Incredible.
and you journaled through this process,
Journaled-
but you
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
necessarily writing a book.
Yep.
Okay.
Continued my normal journaling practice that I started when I lived in Chicago. Was
Yeah.
when I started doing that. And pretty much immediately I got back to Rochester, and I was like, okay, what do I do now?
Is this from Chicago, you're saying? Because you said you went to Chicago on a whim.
okay?
Like
No.
you got back from the islands, you
Went to Chicago.
went to Chicago.
That's still 2020.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm a little jumbled around. So 2020, and then October 2020 to September 20, almost a full year. September 2021. I pretty much lived out of my car.
Okay.
So then a whole year later, I ended that. I actually drove back to Rochester because I went on an Alaskan cruise with my dad and his family. That's what stopped me from living on the road in 2021 is my dad was basically like, we want you to come on this trip. How are you going to make it work? We'll pay for your cruise ticket.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So I ended up ending my road trip by like planning it to get back to Rochester so I could go on that trip with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got back from that, I was just like, I had some car stuff happening, and I was like, this isn't sustainable anymore. I just did this for a year.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to do now. But I'm like, could have went back to LA. There's things I could have done, but all I want to do is start writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just started, and that's all I felt called to do is start putting the story on paper. And that's what I started doing in September 2021. And I'd say I worked a couple part-time jobs in Rochester, only like 15 to 20 hours a week because that was my job. From September 2021 and I'd say until about February, I worked probably 60, 70 hours a week just writing my vomit drafts. And vomit drafts is like the first drafts. Didn't care about spelling, didn't care about nothing, just anything that was in my head, anything that was in my journals, just start creating them into chapters. And I spent probably a solid 6 months fully dedicated of just doing that. And then the rest of the process has been a little mix of traveling and the rest of my life over the last 3 years and kind of going through those phases of writing and editing.
So lead us kind of into, your writing. I really want to know like how you are where you are today. So like kind of talk us through, obviously the book, yes, but like how did you end up where you are?
Yeah. So I got back, I started that writing process, and in my book, I planned the 2021 trip on doing seasonal work, which I'd never heard of in my life before.
Okay. And where did you find out about that?
From traveling, from seeing these places and realizing, oh, there's a lodge in a national park. I guess people work there, right?
Yeah, have to.
I don't know why.
Yeah, it was new to us
No,
too
the Bears run it.
when we visited you in Wyoming.
Yeah.
You were telling us about it, and we're like, this is
It's
a
a
pretty
whole different world.
Yeah.
cool setup.
And it's a whole thing that's
from
existed.
resorts. You can do
Yeah.
summers, you can do winters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you, during your initial travel period of how many months would you say that was before you started writing? You were traveling. Was it a full year that you
Almost.
were? Almost a year. So you're on the road for a year. And that entails going to tons of national parks, tons of campsites, tons of cities, big, small, and in between.
Yep.
And you just have all of these experiences. I mean, we've been on the road for 3 months, 2.5 months, and it seems like we've seen everything there is to see.
But there's
so I can only
much
imagine
more.
what a year would entail, which is exciting. So you write the book, you finish kind of your drafts, maybe,
first couple
and
drafts.
then you think about where you actually want to go.
Yeah.
More permanently at that point, or are you like, I want to go travel again more?
In the book, a year before that, I fell in love with the Tetons so much that in chapter 10, so in the middle of my book, in between the two major parts of the road trip, it's called Intermission. I go back to Rochester, I get a new car. I'm in Rochester for about a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And during that period, I was like, how do I spend more time in these places? Right.
Yeah.
So I find this website Cool Works, and that's the main hub for seasonal work where you can find all these jobs. I applied to 2 places in Yellowstone and 2 places in the Tetons. And this is in 2020. What year are we in right now? This is in 2021.
Yep.
So this is for the 2021 season.
Yep.
So I planned that road trip that's in my book. I talk about all of this in my book on going to Signal in 2021. That's originally, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 months on the road and then go to Wyoming and work.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of these things happen. I get addicted to the lifestyle again.
Yeah.
My dad offers the Alaska thing, like where I'm just like, I'm not staying settled down. Like I'm gonna keep doing this. Like there's no way I'm gonna stop and just work right now.
Right.
So I got hired at Signal in 2021. My first season was 2022.
Okay.
So I skipped out on going there first season to stay.
And that
on
was
the road.
midway through the road trip?
Midway through the road trip, I was gonna go work at Signal, and I chose
gotcha.
not. I backed out.
So
I backed out a week
they
before.
offered you, and you were like, yes, and then immediately no.
A week before I was supposed to start work, I backed out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So then
The streets were calling.
I stayed on the road that summer,
Streets.
and it was on the table too. They were basically like, when I backed out, they're like, oh, because I made up some family thing. I was like,
Yeah.
Family emergency.
Yep.
They're like, oh yeah, let us know if you ever want to come back. I'm like, yeah.
Right.
So then the next year, I was like, it's kind of like in the back of my head, like I need to go to the Tetons. I just felt called to go. I loved that park so much that I wanted to be there for an extended time. So I started writing the book, and then I kind of reapplied in December and January of that year. And that's when I'm like, I'm not going to stay in Rochester. I'm not moving back to LA. I'm going to go
Do something
check out seasonal work, and the place became a home to me. And 3 summers later, I just keep coming back. That's how I kind of found seasonal work, was doing what you guys are doing right now, just being on the road. That's how it.
Right.
And then then just working there now, like people that graduate. There's a few people who graduate high school and they just go out and work a seasonal job. I'm like, I wish I knew about this at 18,
Right. And
17.
that's the thing. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And no one tells you.
No.
Yeah, talk us through just seasonal work real quick, what that entails and how that works.
Yeah.
Like, what does your year look like?
Yeah, so basically I have typically a month to 2 months off in the spring, and then I go work in the summer. With my job, I start a little early, but most of the jobs typically start anywhere from April to June, and you're there until about September, October.
Okay.
And then you have about a month to 2 months off. And winter jobs are normally a little bit shorter, at least in the park. Ski resorts might be longer, and this is all depending on the place and what the job is. But the stuff I'm looking for is normally April to October, and then December to March. So you have about 2 or 3 months off in between.
Yeah.
Where you can travel, do whatever you want to do.
Go see your family, go travel.
Yeah.
I tend to have just been traveling in between all that time because.
Sorry, Nani.
Sorry, Nani.
We love
It's hard to go back.
Nani.
It's hard to go back east when you spend a lot of time out here.
100%. 100%.
In the seasonal work, we learned when we went to Teton, and this is a crazy story. Nick reaches out, hey, I see you guys are traveling. Love to see it. Hopefully we can cross paths. I'm like, absolutely. I was just about to reach out to you. Mm-hmm. I work in the Tetons. Yep, we're going to be out by Yellowstone. We'll be in Wyoming at this time, in October. Perfect. I'll hit you up when we're there. And we find a campsite to stay at. No idea we know he works in the park. We don't know what he does. We don't know where he lives. And we book this campground which apparently is really popular, and you
Yeah.
have to like reserve well in advance. But we
Yeah.
got super lucky where I'm on the night before and a site pops up,
Yep.
and we show up, and I text him, "Hey, we're at this campground in the park," and he's like, "I work there." So we're
and there
blown
were
away.
multiple options.
Yeah,
like
and his
2 or 3.
his mom and grandma are in town, which I haven't seen in forever. So that was a coincidence, and we were able to spend a couple days together.
Yeah.
And it was just like the stars aligned for us, which was awesome. And we
Yeah, it's
really
the
appreciated it.
universe,
And we got to
man.
see, we had a glimpse into his world and what he's doing, what seasonal work is, and kind of where he's at in his journey, which is cool.
Yeah,
So
let's talk to Jack in like a year or 2 and see if he's a seasonal worker or not.
yeah, I mean it's cool. I think it's great.
It's amazing.
For
It's
someone who
amazing.
wants to be in that environment. And I mean, seasonal work, you're at a resort, so there's tons of different jobs you can do. You can
All seasonal
housekeeping.
places need HR.
Yeah, HR. So
Oh god.
they give you housing, food,
Yeah.
and you meet tons of people.
HR gets the best housing always too.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll consider it.
Yeah, you could work, and I'll just hang.
Oh, you'll just hang. You'll just hang.
We'll just
okay.
go hiking and do all types of stuff.
Yeah.
Taylor gets a stressful HR job,
Yeah.
and you're just like in the marina, just hanging out on boats all day.
That's highly likely.
I mean, it's only for a season, right?
For you,
Yeah.
not for the HR.
Yeah, not for me. Not
It's
for me.
nonstop.
Oh my gosh.
So
Just
cool.
incredible. Yeah. I mean, I did have one question I did want to ask, and I feel like you kind of covered it, but obviously every kid when they're younger, they dream about what their future self is going to be doing, what it's going to look like. So when you were a kid, did you really think like now, 30 years old, this is where you'd be?
No, when I was a kid, I wanted to play football, and I never
Football.
grew past 5'3".
Hey, you could still play football at 5'3". You could. So no, not at all.
No, I mean, I always knew I'd be doing something different.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always thought differently. I feel like I've always the path people try to push me on is I've always resisted it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess to be somebody that's that just fell in love with the West Side, I never envisioned that as a kid.
Yeah. Well, I
But-
mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And if you grow up on the East and you come out here, and our family can attest to it too, just by photos and stuff, but they're like, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Like everywhere you look, it's like a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fake, but you don't know what you don't know.
I think the most important part of all of it for me, and what I'm, if I was having a conversation with my younger self, is like, what it is to like be an American, really. Like, I know it's such a weird concept to say, but it's like everybody, I'm American, but it's like no, it's like I've been to 49 states. The only state I haven't been in is Hawaii, and now I'm like since 2020. Really, it's like I'm going. It's hard for me to find a place I'm not going back for the second time, right? Like I feel like this whole country is my home, and not just I'm not from New York. I haven't just lived in these cities. It's like we're a freaking campground in Tucson, Arizona that's been open for a year, and you guys kind of sharing this experience with me now. It's like with those ladies that own this place. It's like we know these
It's
people.
not even real life.
No,
You know what I mean? It's like we know these people.
incredible. I know.
And
I know.
I think to look at my younger self and be like, dude, in 20 years you can drive coast to coast, and this whole land will feel like it's your home. I think it's a pretty unbelievable experience.
No, it is. It is.
We talked about before too, and I think we can all agree that at our age, traveling our country and seeing the places that we can consider home before traveling abroad and going to these other countries and stuff.
Well, kind of
And
like what you were
lived on
talking
that.
about. Yeah.
And he feels the same way.
Yes. Like, know your country. Like, how are you going to be a visitor or I don't know how you put it, but and maybe I'm wrong, so correct me. But like, how are you going to visit some other place when you don't even know where you're from?
Yeah, like how are you going to be a proper guest somewhere when you don't even know who you are?
Yeah.
And
I love that.
because there's a lot of stereotypes. There's a lot of reasons just really like why people look at Americans the way they do.
Yeah.
It's like if you hardly leave your own little town and you're subjected to that perspective and that's it.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you go travel internationally, you're going to look ignorant.
Right. Right.
It's like
100%.
Well, I think we can avoid that now.
So I think the most courageous part of your journey and your story is traveling literally in your car across the country.
Alone for
with
most of it.
No, idea where you're going, where you're
Yeah.
staying, how long you're staying. You have a certain amount of money, you can budget that. You know, you're journaling, you're working on a book, all that stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say was the most challenging or scary part of that process?
Definitely at the beginning, it was getting comfortable of just being able to like camp and and originally I didn't know. Like I said, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how like in my book the 2 road trips are like shifted because it's just like I kind of just hopped in my car and started driving in the fall to the Pacific Northwest. Exactly what you guys did. It's like I'm just gonna go live out of my car and save money by sleeping in national forest. I get up there, it's 15 degrees every night. Like, you know, just like being clueless. Just like the beginning, the stages of being clueless. There's so many times I just like drove into a national forest and looked for camping for an hour or two. Didn't know what I was doing, and then just like screw this, and then drive another 45 minutes to like a city and book a hotel. You know, like that happened a lot at the beginning. Stages.
Fear, man.
But yeah, it was the whole of like I'm in bear country, bears in a pop. Now that I've lived in bear country, I've lived in where bears live for 3 summers.
You're scaring them off.
Yeah,
it's like I don't care, you know. But it's like the unknown, and these you go to these places you know nothing about. You're like, there's a bear sign. That means a bear's gonna come out here. 15 minutes,
right?
And attack me.
It's gonna be right there. Yeah, no, for sure.
I think it's also just like the ignorance of the unknown, right? And then slowly those places become a comfort zone,
right?
And sleeping in your car becomes normal.
Yeah.
At one point, it was just like, I don't know about this.
Right.
I think that was the most nerve-wracking part of all of it at the beginning.
Yeah. How long do you think it took for you to get comfortable and start to? I'm sure you enjoyed the whole process, but I'm sure in the beginning it was a balance of fear and enjoyment.
Probably about halfway through that fall trip.
Really?
So I'd say, yeah. Well, I also had people like join me for parts of it, and that helped for some of it too. As I had Cam flew in from Billings, and I dropped him off in Seattle, and then I had a friend join me from like Bend, Oregon to San Francisco. But I think it was probably when I got to like Southern California.
Yeah.
It was like when I got back to LA for the first time in my book after leaving.
Yeah.
Was when I'm like, oh, this is fine.
Right.
And that kind of just opened me up to like going back to LA after not being there for 6 months during 2020 and being like, this shit ain't changing.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm not missing anything. It literally was like going back into a time capsule.
Right.
I'd done all of these things in 6 months, and I go back to LA and I'm like, it's the same exact thing from when I left 6 months ago. And I think that's kind of like what really opened up the comfort and all of it, and be like, I don't miss having an apartment. I don't miss being near my friends or family. This is my comfort zone now. Is the wander, the being a resident of the road that goes anywhere.
Yeah.
Is my comfort zone now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was that fall, halfway through that fall trip, is when I was fully like, okay. And on the contrary is that trip to the Caribbean islands, when I was in St. Croix, living on a fruit farm in a tent for 3 weeks when I'd never done anything like that in my life.
Right.
Also, like, I think that was also something that really changed my brain. I was like, you're not, don't go. You don't need an apartment.
Don't go back to the 8 to 5.
Like, go back and just hop in your car. When you get back to the mainland, you don't know how to integrate this whole experience you just did for 3 weeks. Go back, grab your car, and just drive.
Yeah.
And it was like it was just a slow like unraveling that.
And you just went for it, which takes guts. Like it really does. There's so much fear there, and you just stuck to your guns and you did it, which is incredible because not many people would do that. And I feel like the second someone's scared, they're going to go back to where they're comfortable and just live that life. So
or worry about society's expectations
Mm-hmm.
of what you should be doing at that point in your life.
Yeah. So it's very impressive.
Which I think controls a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because let's say you leave Chicago, you go get a job in the music business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're hustling through that. You're not even sure you like that business.
Yeah.
Then you switch to it. This is the typical person, right? They
Mm-hmm.
get a job out of college. They're not really sure that they like it. Maybe they switch to something else. We're examples of that.
Oh, for sure.
So regardless of what you're doing, whether it's following the path that society recommends or your own journey, like what you've done, you're going to have trials and tribulations, and you're going to switch gears. You're in LA as a free man, hoping that you can find stability in a job and you can find happiness in that, and you completely shift gears and go do something, and you end up in the Tetons, and you would have never imagined you would be in the Tetons.
Never.
So
I go from the third most populated city is the previous place I had
Yeah.
an apartment to the least populated state with 600,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's a place in this whole 49 states I bet you that feels the most at home for me right now.
Yeah.
And you'd have never found that.
Never
if
found
you
that.
didn't hop in your car.
And I would and to go back, like none of this, and I think this is part of like my whole journey, and like you've always been part of it too, is because like it starts with that Chicago. It starts with you leaving college, going back
Yeah.
home, and being like, I'm moving to Chicago.
Yep.
And then you doing that with me, because I don't know if I would have done that alone at that point
Right.
in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
need support, you
there's-
need familiarity.
Yeah, and then there's all these jumping off points of like the Chicago thing, and then making the movie, and then moving to LA. It's like
Mhm.
I think it was easier for me once I got back to that pandemic like decision
Yeah.
to like, if none of those other things happened, I don't know if I would have been ready at that point.
Right.
You know, and then I look at people like you guys. It's like I've somehow at 30 years old, I haven't built a ton of walls around me in terms of like responsibilities and structure. Most of whatever situations I've gotten myself into, it hasn't been established yet,
Yeah.
or it's been like seasonal work. Even before I discovered seasonal work, right? It's temporal. I can get out of it if something happens.
Yep.
To see you guys build a life for yourself and have these like full-time jobs and be real people in the real society,
Yeah.
and be able to relinquish that to go do what you're doing right now is I feel like everybody needs to do that.
100%.
Because I know not everybody is
Yeah.
blessed to be in the situation I'm in terms of circumstances and how they live their life. But it's like most people build some type of world around them
Mhm.
where it's like, dude, just take those walls off for a couple months.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think everybody needs the experience of what I experienced for a year and a half, what you guys are going through right now. I think it's part of our inherent nature of who we are as human beings and who we've always been. Like
Yep.
at our core, we
Mhm.
have always been wanderers. We have always been nomadic. We always need that sense of wander.
Yeah.
And that world will always be there.
Yeah.
No
You
matter
can go
what.
back to it instantly if you wanted to, but it's just like breaking the mold. I think that's a beautiful way to just like wrap up.
I was
Yeah.
just thinking that.
And also,
Yeah.
one last thing too is like I always hear how people like don't, people don't like driving. People don't like this. People,
Right.
I don't. I think personally, my theory on it
Mhm.
is it's in every single person.
Yeah.
Some people might take more breaking down of what you've created, whether it's over 10 years, 30 years, 60 years,
Yeah.
but you've wrapped that up. It's in every human being.
Mhm.
Everybody
Yeah.
likes
Right.
in
And
their
if
car.
you don't have it, you've pushed that down
Mhm.
somewhere or you've thought it's impossible.
Mhm.
But it's not. It's possible.
It is possible.
And I think we got wrapped up in that world too of
Oh,
we have
yeah.
consistent jobs, we're doing well, our meals are being delivered to our house.
Oh, yeah.
We
Amazon packages every
we're
other
just
day.
the luxuries of life just
Yeah.
consumed me.
Mhm.
And the idea of being in this van and traveling the country and getting back to basics and having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and just having nothing
Peanut butter
was
and jelly
so
sandwiches are always
attractive
good.
to
Oh,
me.
come on. I cook more than a
You
peanut
do,
butter and jelly
but
sandwich.
in theory though, that
Yeah, I
lifestyle,
get
it's
what
like I
you're
want to
saying.
pull
The
back the reins a
simplicity.
little bit,
Yeah.
simplify
Get
my
back
life
to the
again,
basics.
and you inspired that. So we
100%.
appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you hanging out with us twice on this trip.
Yeah.
It really made it what it is.
Yeah,
Made our
and
trip too.
Yeah,
Aw,
we've had a great
sweet.
time. We look forward to the book coming out.
Yep.
We look forward to spending more time with you.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And we hope everybody who's watching enjoyed the podcast. Again, we got Nick Alfieri from Greece, New York, Mr. 585, Rock
Nomad
Boy.
Nick, Rock Boy,
Brugger's, Kodak.
Brugger's, Kodak.
Always repping.
We love you, Nick.
I love you too, guys.